Got something a bit special for you today, branching off of my live interview I did on Florida Chess Live and Psychology of Competition show. This is a game using the very best of the Janowski variation, and it's not often I get to play against a strong grandmaster, much less play a quality game against them if I somehow miraculously win. So this game I take a lot of pride in, and I think it hits a lot of the key features of the main line of the Janowski. Now we got the dirty in the sidelines. If they allow us to grab on c4, we can see all throughout the course how it's nasty in the aggressive Queen's Gambit decline on Chessable. But in the main lines, White gets the standard plans. So how do we deal with the solid play that White's throwing at us? Let's go ahead and dive right in. And my opponent went for d4, d5, and knight f3. And after knight f6, knight c3, we get the Janowski. And of course, we can reach this by multiple move orders. After d4, d5, c4, e6, knight c3, you can go a6 straight away. And most of the time, we're going to get this transposition after the two g knights move into the center, to attack the center, rather. Now, there are multiple variations here, but c takes d5 is the best move from a theoretical standpoint, in my opinion, and it's what all the top guys seem to be doing. So trends filter down from the top. And I would say that when playing strong players, you will see c takes d5 more than anything else. And in my practice online, that is definitely the case. Bishop g5. And this is one of those key differences with Janowski compared to your standard exchange variation of the QGD, or the Carlsbad structure. You have the ability to place this bishop on e6, which gives more ideas and extra continuations. White, on the other hand, is limited in that position of the knight on f3. So if we come all the way back and we see this knight f6 instead with c takes d, e takes d, bishop g5, you don't really have the ability to play bishop e6. And we see in a lot of these lines, you do a move like knight bd7, where we have the classical trap here, check. But generally, this bishop is going to struggle to get into the game. And you can take a look at my game with Wesley So as an example. Just search it up, Tillis So, So Tillis. Give credit where credit's due. He was definitely whiting that game for an example of how to play it with White. Very model game by the elite GM opponent that I had. So getting back to our position with bishop e6, queen b3. My opponent goes for line just to bother the b pawn, and I cover in the course multiple ways to handle these types of queen b3 moves. Whether it be rook a7, b5, there's only one true path, and we got to do the fun path, knight bd7. We say, come on in. Now, deviating from the main game, we've got queen takes b7, rook b8, and after takes, we can see this plan in full swing now, where we have the idea of queen b8, bishop b4, knight e4, where all of our pieces come alive, very much in the style of the Binko Gambit, having those open A and B files for the cost of a pawn to get rapid development and quick play. So I was very interested in getting a position like this, but my opponent, slow and steady, e3, and now I'm making the decision to play rook b8 since we're not having as much fun anymore. Bishop d3, standard, more aggressive square for the bishop than the typical Queen's Gambit. Castles, and now h6, putting the question to the b. c6, And after queen c2, queen c7, and we're getting to a normal structure that you'll see time and time again. And you should be comfortable with the upcoming middle game plans. And I'd say one of the major differences with my course compared to a lot of the courses on Chessable is I will go into the middle game and make sure the reader at least has a plan with how to handle the typical scenarios in the middle game, instead of just simply cutting the variation off here and saying, okay, and you castle on the next move and play chess. Nah, let's go a little bit deeper here. So bishop g3, castles, and after rook ac1, I believe that this is the move in the game that is going to be the move that really cost my opponent and is the starting point of where the advantage slips. I think the rook is much better placed on b1 instead, where it's going to be assisting with the typical minority attack plan. But this subtle, natural-looking move, rook ac1, is where it starts to turn around. So I first go ahead and take on g3. That doubles the pawns. And then a very key move, queen d6. I know the plan for white is to play for the minority attack. He's either going to play in the center, which is going to isolate this pawn for me, or he's going to play for the minority attack with a b4, a4, b5. So I'm simply keeping an eye on b4 and removing my queen from this battery along the c-file. And on a3, I have no fear of changing the pawn structure here. a5, keeping that eye on b4. And my opponent is acting as if he's going to go for the e4 plan, which again, I'm not intimidated by at all. But in case he does, let's go ahead and get our rook lined up for the potential action. On knight a4, let's go ahead and improve this rook, because looks like the action is going to be happening on the c-file. I'm in a cramped position, so I don't have a problem with trading. And I really don't have a good reason to keep the queens on the board here. And as soon as the queens trade, we have a dynamically equal position. But in the long term, I felt very, very optimistic about my chances with black, because I can already see if I organize my pieces well, I'm going to have b6 and c5 in the future, and then eventually c4, and potentially I get the open b file to work with. And it's very straightforward, the plan for black, to change the pawn structure and try to press in the position. So I need to go ahead and defend the a-pawn firstly. And you go, well, why not b6 immediately? Well, this pawn isn't secure. And after b6, say he drops back to c2, and on the following move goes there, I would be in an awkward situation, especially after knight e5. So this is where slow play, I have my plan, but I need to optimize it. Rook a8, and now I felt like knight e5 needed to come later after, say, rook c2, because knight d7, I'm getting rid of his strong knight on e5 compared to my knight that really was just a defensive piece. And here, his bishop is better than mine. He has the good bishop. That's why the plan is even stronger now to change the pawn structure in the center, try to press c5, and now I don't have to worry about the weakness of c6 as the b-pawn gets pushed forward. So I've really helped myself in the position here with knight d7. After rook ec1, b6, get back. Now a4, making sure that the pawn structure is locked down. f5, again, playing against both g4 and e4 ideas. Let's get the kings involved. And rook ac8, getting back to my plan. c5. The pawn majority is finally on the move. c4. Now the path is clear. We want to get that play. Go for the base pawn. It's the weakest part of the chain. After f4, b5. Bishop e6. And again, we may have the bad bishop, but my boy's doing work here. He's holding it all together for us, and b4 is going to come to pass. You can't stop it. Rook h4, g4 getting rid of that doubled pawn, b4 forcing move. The breakthrough is going to be absolutely devastating here. Rook takes b4, hitting that base pawn. He needs to defend. I get rid of my bad b. We're in the pure rook and pawn endgame, but my rooks are coordinated. His are not. King f3. We get the pawn in hand, and we got the two passers, which are going to end up sealing white's fate here. f5. Good practical move. a3. Check. Why not grab a pawn? a2. He's got to worry about that guy. g4. And very nice play by my opponent, giving himself a lot of practical chances. Because if you're in wicked time trouble here, it would be very easy to play a move like king h4 and end up toast. But simply king g6. And I like the final combination here. How to win. If you're a in-game tactics guy, this is where you pause the video, try to figure out what to do. All right. Hopefully you found c3, and after king e4, where the king is trying to stop the c-pawn, the strong rook d2, cutting the king off, where nothing can be done about the push of the c-pawn. If the rook leaves the a-file, the a-pawn queens. And if he does nothing, the c-pawn marches, and it's a girl. And with that, that's the game. Hopefully you enjoyed this solid game against a grandmaster that I played using the aggressive Queen's Gambit decline text, the dirty, dirty Janowski.